can come over here.
I prefer that wall.
Oh, yeah, and see the screen.
We're good to go.
Oh, thank you. Wonderful. Good evening. It's Thursday, August 19, 2021. This is a meeting of the Council Rock School District Facilities Committee of the School Board. And I'm chairing this evening Ed Tate. We have 3 board members.
Denise Brooks. Mary McKee.
Andy Block.
Thank you. And I need to point out that the practice of this school district has been that board committee meetings have public comment at the end of the meeting. There's no public comment at the beginning of the meeting. And we also do not interrupt the meeting for questions. Those need to be held until the end as well. And we will have public comment at the conclusion of this rather meaty agenda of business items. So I will turn it over to Mr. Doug Taylor.
Thank you. So yeah, we do have a pretty significant agenda. I will go as quickly as I can. There are some items I want to spend a little bit of time on. We have an energy report I'll touch on tonight, an update on the facilities projects, where we stand with those, capital projects, the summer projects this year, and just some early findings as I prepare the presentation for October and the distribution of those of the book again in October. Some miscellaneous items to go over, and one of those is the ABM, economic impact to their staffing and some challenges that we're seeing, and then the regular agenda items I usually carry. So what I'd like to do, we have guests tonight. We have Mr. Joseph Scala and Bernie Rickards from ABM. I'll tee this off for them and just let them touch on what they're experiencing right now. But as I said, as you know, there are labor challenges across the country. The situation is forcing wages to increase tremendously. Local establishments, fast food restaurants, retail stores are offering bonuses and increasing wages. ABM has locked into rates with us for last year, this year, and next year. But they're seeing some challenges which will affect us, will affect how the schools are maintained and ultimately the finished product here for our students and staff. So I do want to give them an opportunity to touch base with you tonight. They developed some options in an effort to try to maintain staff and also to potentially continue to attract some workers as well. And obviously that comes at a cost. But again, I felt that it was important enough to let them come speak to this. I didn't want to just brush this off and say, it's your contract, it's what you own, it's your problem. Because at the end of the day, it's our problem. So I'm going to let Bernie come up or Joseph and touch base on it. This is your slide here.
Hi, good evening. As you said, I'm Joe Scala. I'm the Regional Director for ABM. A couple of the issues that we're finding, and I find it regionally for myself, the labor pool keeps getting smaller and smaller. And the problem is that the wages are increasing across the board. The economics of our current time, a lot of people are getting a lot of money not to go to work. So it's driven the wage rates up considerably. The problem we have with the school districts is that because of the dynamic of hiring, we have to go through background checks, clearances, and as the pool gets smaller and smaller, it's harder and harder to find people who can pass all of that stuff. So, and as we're going around, and it's not just here in Council Rock, I actually have several school districts where I'm having the same issue. One district in particular that you may know is Lancaster. We're actually in the same situation with them. It's a little more severe because we are actually got considerably less people because they're just not coming to work. And we're down probably about 15, 16 people there. So it's become a challenge. We've tried recruitment agencies, we've tried temp agencies, and even the temp agencies are having problems finding people. So this is it's actually across the country. It's just a challenge. In order to stay competitive we feel that raising the wages is probably the only thing we can do at this point. There's really not much else we can do. I mean, we can't drag them in. We've offered bonuses, we've offered hiring bonuses. We've told everybody who works for us currently, they get $250 if they bring somebody in, and that person who stays, we give them $250. We've hired recruitment agencies, so it's become a challenge. So we did some calculations, and as you can see, the calculations show what the additional costs would be based on what we have currently. The average wage rate we're running right now is between $12.37 and $12.50 an hour. So if we increase it to $14 an hour, the annual cost to the district would be $204,368. We also gave you an increase of wage and a reduction of staff as an option as well, because we understand that economics is not, it's a challenge for everybody, and we want to make sure it's as little of an impact as we can possibly make it on you. So if we reduce the staff by 2 FTEs at a $14 average, it'd be $136,936. It would make it a little more difficult for us with 2 less people, but we can manage if we need to. So do you have any questions for me?
What wage rate are you recommending?
I'm sorry?
What wage rate are you recommending?
Well, if you ask me, I'd say $15 an hour, but I'm also a realist. I think $14 an hour will drive them in. We'll get some activity. Because right now, McDonald's is paying that rate. The locals, Wawa actually went back down to 13. They were at 14. But working at Wawa is not the same as working in a school. It's different. So, Amazon is starting people at $17 an hour, and they're giving them $2,500 sign-on bonuses. I think from an economic standpoint, I think if you went with $14 an hour, you would probably be able to start generating the people that we want. Because we get them in, and we are bringing people in, but the problem is we get in 2, we lose 3. And they go, I can get more money somewhere else, and they go.
Well, my feeling is, in this environment, these services are critical. So, I mean, we have to respond to the job market as it exists. But my primary focus is the custodial services are critical. So I would not want to see a reduction in staff because we need that support.
Whereas I won't disagree with you, but also it's not my intention to just walk in and say, I need all of this. I'm going to give you options.
And I appreciate that. But my perspective is that, I mean, I deal with this in my professional life, and obviously not the same services and the same kinds of roles, but we have high turnover. I spend all day talking about retention strategies and what do we do. So I understand it from like a human resources challenge that you have, but I'm looking at also what we pay you to do. What are you bringing to our schools? And this is the time that we have to respond to that to make sure that we have everything in place to make sure that you do the job we've hired you to do.
And I don't disagree.
I trust you. If you say $14 is going to make a difference and will help solve this problem, I can support that. But I wouldn't not want to see it with the reduction of staff, but that's part of the discussion.
Thank you. I had a question about losing 2 FTEs. Could you give me a picture of what that looks like? I would assume it wouldn't simply be removing 2 people from a building.
Yes and no, and I'm going to actually let Bernie respond to that because I'm a regional director. I'm not into the nitty gritty. So, Bernie, please.
Hi, how are you? Could you repeat that, please?
I'm curious about where if we were to reduce staff by 2 FTEs, where would that occur? How would that look? To Denise's point, what would the impact be for the services we're currently receiving?
I would sit down with my management team. Of course, it would be, we would try the less invasive route, whether it be a floater. I really don't want to take people away from the schools. So the first people that would go would be our floaters. That being said, our floaters are our backup. If I get a no call, no show, the floaters fill in. If I need extra work done, floaters fill in. But I really don't want to take anybody away from any of the schools. But again, we would sit down and strategize on how it would benefit the school and benefit the district without being, overly evasive.
So as a follow-up, I'm assuming then that those floaters are used routinely?
Yes.
Yeah, so that would be kind of a missing piece for us.
It would be, especially last year, and this is we're finally in it, our first full year, as COVID was raging on, and we were having, 5 different areas for lunches in some schools. I needed those floaters to fill in. This year, if it's more of a normal, quote-unquote, normal year, the floaters really are for backup and for our project team. That was the initial intent of having our floaters. Again, if it's more of a normal year, it really won't impact, if we get rid of the floater, it really won't impact the cleanliness or the sanitation of the school. But again, if we go back into what we had last year, I need the floaters.
So if I may, one final one. If it were decided to reduce staff by those 2, and we came to see that it was really detrimental to the cleanliness, the safety of our buildings, we'd be able to put those folks back in place?
Yes.
Thank you.
More of a comment than a question, and probably Doug, for you. From a decisioning standpoint, I defer to you and your team relative to what makes sense for the buildings. The only comment that I'd make is we've got a wage increase that we probably need, and thanks for coming out, by the way, guys, and answering some questions. A wage increase that we feel like we need to staff the schools based on the environment, which I see every day as well, so I don't debate that. But I hope that this is a shared endeavor. I appreciate the way that you framed it up. We can't expect our vendors to take the full weight because they're not going to be able to. And, I pride you on being a great partner to our folks. I know you're always looking out for our vendors, but we do want to make sure that the weight is shared. These guys make a margin for their services. I would expect that margin to decrease based on this, and that you guys have some investment to get us through that, and that, we'll be participants in the spirit of partnership to get through what we've got to get through. So as long as that's happening and it's reasonable and it's fair to both businesses, I would defer to your judgment. I don't want to see a position where we're footing the entire bill because we have to do that. And I also agree that we don't want to, we don't want to squeeze you guys to the fact where doing business with us becomes unreasonable, or to where you do have to cut things that we're going to require, because I think we're going to need more than this, frankly. So, Doug, I know that's how you approach everything that we do in terms of being, scrappy, for lack of a better word. So, thanks for bringing this out, but.
Okay. Yeah, and again, I in no way intend for this to open the window for other people to come to me and start asking for more monies. There are plenty of people that ask for money that are told, absolutely not, you're going to do what you need to do. This is, as Denise pointed out, a different situation. It's the biggest service contract I know that I certainly have for facilities, and it's an important contract for our district. So ABM at no time came and said, you have to do this. If you don't, we just can't help. It's been a team approach, and I agree. We can certainly go back and make sure that these numbers are fair and they're feeling it on both sides, so that it's not the same kind of profit per person as it is for the rest of the team they have. So, and then I can bring you an amendment to a board meeting, and we can have a further discussion, and we can have the next level of management there to answer any questions if you have them that evening. It's up to you. So, okay, thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Appreciate it.
Thank you very much, folks.
Yep. You guys are good. Have a good night. Thank you. Okay. Energy management. We continue to move along at a pretty good pace as far as the usage of power. However, we are seeing in the current updates a consumption that's nearly 24% higher than our baseline. And had discussions with Aramark about this. Again, 24% compared to the baseline of a year ago. So 1 year ago, the energy was up 8% compared to the baseline the year before, which some of that was attributable to additional square foot and some other things. But we're seeing a steady increase over the last 6 months. And in talking to Aramark, we believe it does have a lot to do with the increase in outside air that we're providing in our buildings. There is an impact to us from an energy standpoint. It is the when you bring in outside air that's not optimal for the conditions inside, you either have to overcool it more than you would have if you would shut the dampers down and minimize the amount of warm outside air you're bringing in, or even the cool air that you have to heat. That is a big impact. I mean, the savings in electric have decreased from 9% to 4%, so we're still, to the good side as far as savings. But it's important that we recognize that we have, some slippage, and the natural gas has declined from 11 to 33%. So I'm going to work with Aramark to develop a dashboard that we can observe gas and electric individually, that we can track it on a more regular basis, and I'm not waiting for these monthly updates, which are usually months behind because they have to wait for utility bills to actually create these spreadsheets. So we're not looking at static reports, and we can start to look at things more current and make adjustments that we might need to make. But all of this with the consideration that we will not compromise the indoor air quality and outside air. We have to do what we know is best for staff and students with COVID and things that are going on. So just an update on where it is, and that we had a little slippage, but we believe that is why, and we're going to track it more closely than we have. So facilities improvements, the Star Center is substantially complete and ready to go. The only thing holding up the approval was some Bucks County Department of Health. We had to put some hand wash units next to the triple bowl sink. They finally arrived, and we're waiting. We're trying to get a hold of someone at the Department of Health to come out and give our final inspection. Finding a staff member to do so is challenging right now. We're working hard. At any rate, I do not believe the township would keep us from using our building for staff and kids, but we would like to have the final certificate of occupancy. We do have a temporary certificate. Couple things that are not complete. There's a facade, aluminum panels on the facade that just aren't here yet. It's just an aesthetics issue. It's not a performance issue. And the traffic signal project at the front of the building. The striping has been addressed at the front, so the turn lanes are in, so there's no confusion as how you get into the lot. But the ornamental poles and mast arms are just weeks and weeks and weeks out yet from when they were ordered. If it were something more standardized, like a spun, the stainless steel or something that you see, probably could have had it, but the fluted ornamental pieces are not coming quickly. So probably sometime in October. All of the rough-in is there, the foundations are in, the base plates are in, the bolts, everything's just there waiting for that product to come. And the facade, the yellow pieces where those pieces are missing, the building is in great shape. It's really nice inside. There's our relocated statue from Hvac, which they were nice enough to donate to us. You can see there's some outdoor seating. It's really a great facility, and classrooms that feel like classrooms. The open concept, which is real nice, that we can break down into individual rooms or large group rooms, which actually will be nice if we want to offer these to community in the evenings. We have a really nice opportunity to offer some nice meeting space. The kitchen area, which again, we're not preparing food here, so the health department approval is kind of fuzzy. We really, technically, I don't think need it, but we're being asked to seek it. We have the food trucked in with box trucks, and we have warmers and coolers that we keep the food in, but we're gonna satisfy the request for sure. And some microwaves where kids can heat up food the cafeteria, the toilet rooms, the hallway, which much like Newtown Middle School, on one side are the common spaces and on the other side are the academics. It really feels a lot like Newtown Middle School. It's the same architect, Breslin, who did a real nice job. Hillcrest Elementary School, we have vacated the building. Nakia is getting the building ready over at Richborough Middle School for the elementary school program. They're in pretty good shape. It's a lot of work. There was a lot of stuff in Richborough Middle School from all of the moves that people leave behind and go on, and then the next person's dealing with the stuff that's left behind. And everyone has stickers from other people, and it became confusing. So we're trying to clean it all up. But Hillcrest itself, the interior demo is in progress, exterior work. One thing that we encountered here, which was an unforeseen, is the quarry tile floors. We assumed were a thin set tile over top of a concrete slab, but they ended up being a 2-inch thick wet bed. I'll show you in one of the photos. So the specifications said take the tile out, clean up the slab, and put a new floor over top. But you can't take the tile out without interrupting that 2-inch thickness of old wet bed that was under it. And then it would require a new 2-inch pour of something to bring it back up, and it becomes costly. So we did some sounding of the existing tile and found that the tile is really well adhered to the existing floor. So we can probably float a material over the tile to take care of the joints and put the tile, the new floor, right over top of what was there. And maybe even see a little credit back from what we were planning on. So that's good news, and we're working on some meetings with flooring manufacturers and the self-leveling reps and making sure we're all good with warranties to do this. The roof replacement will get started in September. Again, delivery of materials is really challenging right now, and roof insulation is a big challenge. You cannot get roof insulation. So we're hoping that the roof insulation does come for a September install. And PlanCom Part H, project financing, is a document I'll have at the board meeting. Again, it's all moot at this point. I mean, I know that the architect that works for the state is leaving. They have no plan to replace him. So I don't know that if and when we'll ever see PlanCon come back to what we hoped it would be. But that is, those are sections of floor that were removed. They saw cut them and removed them because they're putting utilities in. But you can see that darker piece on the top is actually the full depth of how that tile floor is installed. So we would have had to replace all of that. And as you can also see, the tile goes nowhere when you're working with these sections. It stays well adhered and probably good to
Do it that way. That seems an interesting
to
design.
do what?
Why did they,
Yeah,
is there a benefit to that?
it's an older system that really went away in the 80s, but I guess for some reason they felt it was, the architect at the time felt that that was the better way to do it. You'll usually see that in like the refrigerator and freezer boxes. They come recessed and you fill it up with the wet bed and then put the tile in to flush it out with the adjacent floor. It's an old way to do terrazzo, but in the 80s, it all turned around to just like a thinner product that you put right over concrete. And for some reason, and in fact, at Solfeinstone, it's done that way. We did a lot of testing at Solfeinstone. We didn't do it here, and sure enough, you know,
Good to know for Richborough.
it's definitely good to know for Richborough, but it's disappointing that we didn't, with all the investigations we do, that we didn't figure this one out. But the good news is we'll see some credit back, which is good news.
May I ask a question on this topic? And forgive me if it's too nitpicky.
You want me to go back?
Whatever, I don't know what you're laying on top, sort of how thick that quartz is going to be that you lay on top. For example, there's a doorway there. Will it impact doorways, thresholds? Will they need to be adjusted as a result?
No, it's an excellent question. It's actually, you would have taken the tile out, which is thicker than the quartz tile, and put the quartz tile in. So at the end of the day, this detail flushes the floors out between the classrooms and the hallways better than if you had taken the tile out and put the quartz tile down. It's very perceptive. It's a great question, and it was a concern. But no, it actually ends up being a better detail. Yeah, because the concrete at the classrooms was poured higher than in the hallway. They recessed it in the hallways, but the classroom stayed up. Yes, yep. And they're enlarging some of the toilet rooms. As you can see, most of the partitions are staying in place, which is different than a lot of the projects we do. We respected the walls that are there, but we had to enlarge some of the toilet rooms to meet current code. This was the old office area we're working on. The cutouts in the floor are new utilities, under slab utilities. When people ask for, yeah, can you just put a bathroom here or a bathroom there? This is why I'm a little shaky when you ask for bathrooms in a new or an existing building, because you have to cut floors, get the plumbing, the drains to the locations. But these were not far from the main hallway, so the run isn't far. And then this is the new stormwater management system at Hillcrest that will be underneath. This was the playground area. It'll be underneath the playground area, which will be a parking lot. So Feinstein Elementary School, we have gotten the classrooms ready for kids. They are furnished and ready to go. The unsuitable soils that we encountered were certainly an unforeseen. We did do test borings. We did do our homework. And despite that, the soils in the area that we tested, obviously we missed it with the test borings, but most of the soils were very deep. The organic soils went deeper than we anticipated, had that rich smell, soils that are not suitable to put a parking lot on. So you have to continue to excavate until you come to a point where it is a suitable bearing for the new construction. Found that elevation, put a geofabric down, and then built stone back up. So you have to take the earth away more than you wanted to, and then put stone and build up so you can put your lot on it. And that added about $144,000 to the project. Now we have contingencies and allowances, to address that, but it's a big hit to take from the get-go. We weren't, yeah. The new classroom wing, the stone is in place, and we did some things to reduce that. That 144 is a reduced number because we actually took the millings from the asphalt that we took out, and we used that in place. We own stone underneath the building pad. We reduced the depth of the stone at the building pad and used that in place. Some of the soils we were able to lose on site and not have to take them off site. So we did everything we could to reduce the impact of that, but it still feels like a pretty big number. The slab on grade for the new classrooms will be ready to go by mid-September, and the structural steel, which was projected for November, which made me very nervous, has been moved to mid-September. It should be here in about 3 weeks. And if that holds true, getting the building enclosed before winter, which is key, is very, very likely. And we'll continue to track it closely. And PlanCom Part H, project financing, again, for this, we'll bring to the board just for recording purposes. The unsuitable soils, again, I'm going to propose that this be a change order instead of an allowance adjustment, just because I don't want to use too much of the allowance before we start digging into all the renovations inside the building. And again, it's part of the approved construction cost. So this isn't monies outside of the total project budget you approved. It's just using some of the contingency to address it. But it was about a 2-foot average cut depth, 3,000 cubic yards at $45.50 a cubic yard, which was competitively a bid number. When bids were submitted, they provided unit prices with their bids. So the number is a fair number. And we also think, because I said we use the millings and other things, there's going to be about a $20,000 credit. We're working on that credit piece back. So we'll get that credit and we can put it back into the project cost as well. So the 144 might be 124 or something like that by the time we're done. And that area in red is the area of soils replacement. You can see it's a pretty sizable section. And there are some of those soils that we had to deal with. Inside, we built the temporary classrooms. This was in the library area. We carved out an area for classrooms. In half the gym, we constructed some classrooms. And here is one of the classrooms in half of the gym. And it's air conditioned. It's a wonderful space, honestly. It's probably one of the, climate-wise, one of the best spaces in the building. The lights are new. Everything feels new. It feels good. And it's for 1 year, and next year, this will become part of the cafeteria space. And this is the partition that's built between the gym and the classrooms, filled with insulation, drywall on the classroom side, and on the gym side, you can see plywood that is being painted as well. And this is the lower level that once was classrooms with the hallway down the middle. That's all opened up at this point. And we had to provide an emergency egress from the second level because we took the stair tower away that was at the end of the building. These are those stairs from the second level that will safely take staff and students in the event of an emergency down to grade. And that walkway goes around the site to an exit at a gate that safely gets the kids around the construction and away from the building in the event that there would be an emergency. Only for emergency use and only until we finish this first phase, which after the first year, those stairs go away as well. So it's just for 1 school year. And here was the stair tower at the end of that 2-story classroom wing, which is removed. And this is the side where the corridor linked the 80s to the 60s piece and took you to that stair tower. This allowed us to get into that courtyard. We're seeing a lot of water that came through the wall into that lower level classroom area. So we were able to waterproof the wall, take care of that problem, and preparing for the new 2-story addition. And you see that little yellow dotted line? That's the lower level. That hallway will also pop out, and they'll both come into that new open classroom space where the learning stairs are, and we get some daylight in. It'll feel real nice, and it's exciting to see it come into form. The synthetic turf project is moving along. The underground stormwater systems are installed. The electrical service has been extended from the building to the exterior. The water service has been extended to the exterior. The synthetic turf field's scheduled for a September installation. I will say that there are some other districts that have experienced delays in the delivery of turf. I'm hoping that we are not one of those. It's kind of a hit or miss thing. It has been ordered early. We're hoping that we're fortunate to get it on time. They are ready. The stone building pad, or the stone pad is going in where the turf will be laid, and we're hoping that the turf will be here in September, which will allow for our October completion, which we're working for. The lights have been installed. The Musco lights have been installed, and that's good news.
Doug, quick question for you. Is it too late if we were to secure some type of sponsorship to put something on the field? Or is that something?
It's never too late. You
done
basically.
After the fact, and as a follow-up, if you put something on the field, is that something that you can take up at the end of an agreement?
Yes.
Okay, so you can do it once carpet's down.
You can do it when it's there. We cut it out, and we either sew or glue the new section in. And obviously, before we put all the infill in would be better, because you lay the carpet and then you put all the mix in. So it'd be great if we knew early, but.
Well, that might be something just for you and Robert to discuss how we, and Mr. Tate, if there's an opportunity, in the next whatever to solicit something, whether it be through ads in the paper, whatever it might be.
Sure.
Private contacts, let some of our users have an opportunity to bring somebody in.
I've worked on this in the past in my old life, and we've done you do images of the field, and you can kind of show if your image were here, what the cost would be, if your image were here, what the cost would be. And you can, if somebody's interested, you can show their image on the field and show them what it would look like. And so we're happy to.
I know we don't have the capacity as a district with everything you guys have going on to go out and actively solicit, but I mean, we have a really significant professional base in our community, so that might even be something worth blasting out to our parent base to see if there's any interest there. So, don't know, just an idea.
Yeah. For sure, okay.
Yeah, but we gotta go quick.
We do, or we have to, or they vacuum the section up, they put the new section in, and then they, put the infill back in, and it's all good. So we can do it, but the sooner the better, just because the field would be new and it would feel good to have it as part of a new field.
So maybe something to ask Robert about.
Yes, absolutely. And the turf field, the natural turf field is below. This was kind of a value engineering approach of taking the soil that was there and let's use it next to the field and create a nice natural turf field next to our field. So the natural turf field will not be as deep as the synthetic turf field, but it will be a nice field nonetheless. The trees that are in yellow are going to be cut down. They are original trees that have really, they've been diseased and they're not looking very healthy. So it doesn't make sense to keep them around. We got a good number from Blair to take those down. The other dotted line is the lane that I talk about often as part of it's a non-renewal project. I keep it in my, in the capital plan, our capital plan. But it's the ability to extend that driveway out to Holland Road and provide another means of egress for the district for buses only or for, controlled exiting during large events, things like that. So if maybe the next phase of the stadium would come, I think that would be the time to put that drive in with the stadium piece of it. This is that entrance from the road, and those trees you can see on the left, while that was winter, the tree on the right is today. They're not real happy. And there is the second light going in. Those are the 90-foot high Musco lights that have gone in, and they are in place. Capital improvement projects. I won't go into a lot of detail other than to say we're in good shape with most. The south glazing has been replaced. There are some spandrel panels. Those are the panels that have color to them that generally hide structure behind them, which is why it's not clear glass. So we're waiting for the spandrel panels to come in. It's not affecting anything. The delivery of the starting blocks for the pool, we're still waiting for those. Again, another product that is just behind. We're working with Brian Johnson at North to put those in while he has a break in his program. It looks like we're going to be able to do that. The HVAC equipment for North, we had a delivery date, and then we checked the ticket, and they tracked it, and now they don't know where the units are. So we are trying to find our HVAC equipment that's being delivered to North. The good news is it's air conditioning, and that's the bigger issue. Heating is fine, so we'll find the time to put these in when we do find our equipment. The star signal, as I said, we're waiting for the mast poles and the arms. However, the flashing project, the 15-mile-an-hour flashers across the district are in. There are some you'll see that are still duplicated. They hadn't taken the old ones down because they were waiting for 7 controllers for those. They have been delivered. They are now going out, putting those in. They're the controllers that determine what times they flash. So that is happening, and by next Wednesday, they'll be finished with that project. And if you haven't seen them, we used a black pole. They're really nice. The new flashing units look great across the district. The rain garden at Holland Middle School is finally finished, and it's great, and we needed to get that for the kids to get safely from the neighborhood to the school and dry. It was really messy. The terrazzo repairs at South are finished. There's one corridor that we couldn't finish because you cannot get resin. Resin is also hard to secure, so the terrazzo people were limited as far as how much they could get, and they, at no cost, are going to come back next summer and do the one section of corridor for us. So a great relationship with them. And the district-wide HVAC improvements, the bipolar, I'm going to get into that in a little bit more detail in a minute. So really in pretty good shape, with the exception of the projects, we just can't get the materials there. It has nothing to do with performance or efforts on anyone's part. It's just the challenge in the construction industry right now. This is the Holland Middle School path. It used to go straight through along the woods, but when we renovated that building and we redid all of the site stormwater, this area sees a lot more water flowing through, and it was challenging for the walkers. This is coming from the other direction, from the bottom up. So it goes around. And for those that like to take walks in the evening and weekends, it makes for a little bit more fun meandering path, but it will keep everyone dry. This is the rain garden. We worked with the Conservation District to do this project, and we have some kind of wet plantings. It'll be kind of wet, a couple inches of water in the bottom that'll keep these bog kind of plants growing. And then those drains get replaced with a more substantial drain. They're temporary till the drains come into the contractor, and those 3 pipes drain into the woods, into another outflow area. So if it fills too much, it drains out. So that is the rain garden. The needlepoint bipolar ionization, I just want to take a couple minutes because I have gotten some emails from community. No. So I want to take a couple minutes because there have been questions, there have been concerns. I have answered some emails. This product creates positive and negative oxygen ions. They attach themselves to viruses. They neutrally charge them. Again, I am not by any means a certified industrial hygienist. I'm not an expert at this, but I have had a lot of conversations with folks that really know what they're doing, HVAC specialists, industrial hygienists, and other professionals. They mitigate mold spores, pollen, bacteria, and odors, which are all great benefits in themselves because we have a lot of concerns in classrooms across the district with whether it's mold spores or pollen and allergies and doctor's notes if you can do something to help us in the classroom. So this will help all of those teachers and students that have those other issues. They're compact and mounted in existing equipment. They're not noisy. They're powered with the equipment. We have the ability to connect those to our building management system to monitor on and off, but there is a light that indicates if they're on. When we change the filters, we can see the units. The light's on, we know that they're operating. If it's not, we know we have to replace it or see what's happening with it. As I said, they're quiet. They only operate when the equipment operates. We can measure the impact by counting the particulate size and the percentage present before and after the installation. Baseline testing was done in all of the spaces that are going to receive these units, including baseline ozone. There's a lot of concern that they're creating ozone and they're going to create sickness in a room, especially for those that have health issues. And we specifically used units that comply with UL 2998 and 867, which are ozone-free, byproduct-free technology, that they will not create ozone or any harmful side effects in that way. So we were careful to specify units that comply with that comply with the ASHRAE requirements, which the engineers follow for their guidance when they design buildings. We have about 225 air handlers and 650 terminal units, like unit ventilators, that are seeing these units. All schools are getting these units. Star Center has them. They were part of the base project. Only the maintenance building over at Twining Ford will not, because they don't have mechanical systems that could receive these units. Every other building is seeing these installed, and those that are having them installed, including Sol Finestone, they're going to be installed in the existing building. Because we have a building that's phased over 3 years, we're not going to make them wait for this when everyone else is getting it. As we renovate the building, we'll pull those out and we'll have those for spares for other buildings. We're doing Richboro because it's being used as a swing school for other schools. And Chancellor Center is also being addressed. So we have completed Star, Wrightstown, North and South. At this point, once the kids return, they'll be working evening hours. So it will extend to October or November to finish the project. And it's about a $682,000 project, which is in the $40,000 per school range. So the number sounds big, but when you look at it per facility, on average, the high schools are certainly more, the middle schools are more, and the elementary schools are a little less. The technology's not new. It's been around since the late 1800s. As I said, it neutralizes viruses. It requires no ongoing maintenance. Once they're installed and operating, they're operating. It meets the ULs that I talked about. It's recognized by the American Society of Heating, Refrigerating, and Air Conditioning Engineers based on the UL compliance. It also allows for filters with lesser ratings to be used. Because the particles become larger, they're caught in less efficient filters because they're larger particles getting caught in less efficient filters. And the question is asked, well, why don't you just put in MERV 13 filters and you don't have to spend all this money and you'll be fine. The MERV 13 filters are not inexpensive. You have to change those more often than you do standard filters. And the other issue with that is you can't just put a new MERV 13 filter in a piece of equipment that is an older piece of equipment. Those motors were sized for a certain type of filter. If you put a more restrictive filter in that reduces the airflow and increases the static pressure, it will not function the way it's supposed to. In fact, the motor may burn, and you'll lose the motor. And in fact, you could degrade the system performance because it just can't pull air the way it should have. So your air exchanges get less, and it doesn't work. So we've looked into it, and it was something for consideration, but we just couldn't. And I would say that these systems do not replace health and safety protocols established by federal, state, local agencies. These are to supplement. They're in a room to help make the space more healthy, but they don't replace the other safety components that we talk about.
So these, have filters that need to be replaced, but they're less costly filters?
No, these don't have filters at all, but the filters that are in the units are the units that are the filters that were designed for the unit. So
They would ordinarily have to be replaced.
yes.
These will permit less expensive filters to be used.
Right, we don't have, because we can't take out a more standardized filter and put a MERV 13 filter in, we're keeping the standardized filters, but those standardized filters, even though the fabric isn't as tight, will catch more dirt because the particles are growing.
Yeah.
Instead of being a 0.3 micron particle, it's now a 5 or a 10. It's big, and it gets caught where it wouldn't have before. So the filter, or it's dropping to the floor and not even making it to the filters. So anyway, ozone was the greatest concern, so we did include that as part of the indoor air quality testing. We did perform testing for the Star Center because that building is ready. The unfortunate piece is there's not occupants right now. It's not a full load of people, so it's not performing as it will when there's students and staff in the building. But even with that, the results were really favorable. Once we started the units, there were no traces of ozone in any space other than at the main entrance where the doors were open and they were moving furniture into the building. So we had ozone from outside come inside, but no ozone was produced in any of the spaces where these units were fired up. And the particulate counts and particles as a percent of the total count for a location demonstrated that these units are actually performing as we had hoped. And I just have 2 more slides on this, and I promise I'll stop. The example particle counts for different size ranges. So you'll see a substantial increase in the particulate material counts. So these are counts per space. So the top is before we started the unit. It's a hallway at the entrance, and the total particles was 101,000. Those particle that were 0.3 were 97,000. 0.5 were 3888. And you can see as you go, 1, there were 227. 3, they were 30. Particles of 5 were 11, and 10 were 1. We started the units up, and you go down to the same space below, and you'll see that you want the 3s to reduce. They're the smaller particles. You don't want as many small particles because that means they're still floating around and creating trouble. So they reduced, but you can see the 5s increased from 3888 to 6200. The 1s increased from 227 to 2000. The 3s from 30 to 755. The 5s from 11 to 386. And the 10s from 1 to 86. So these particles grew in size. Many more were floating around the room than before, so the smaller became bigger, which is exactly what you want. You want them to get bigger and get trapped in filters and fall to the floor. And the last slide on this is the particles as a percentage of the total count for any location. So the same room, a hallway near the entrance, you can see that the count for the 0.5 increased 2 times. The 1s increased 11 times, the 3s 29 times, the 5s 45, and the 10s 100 times from before and after. So you can see with real data that when these are operating, that we're getting bigger particulates and things that are getting caught up and no ozone. So I'm really pleased at how these are performing, and we're going to see better performance when kids are in the building, and we're going to see better performance from different types of equipment. These are VAV boxes. I think with a unit ventilator, you'll see even better performance. And we'll see that because we're going to get these same tests for every building. And I promise I won't review everyone with you. So, preparing the version 10 of the capital plan. Again, that will be in October that I'll present that plan, identifying the high-need, deferred, preventative maintenance, and non-renewal projects. I'll update the 5-year capital plan, and I really believe, as we talked about when Mr. Stone was still here, borrowing is really something we need to consider as we look at these projects. The one I want to review with you as I'm seeing it is something that's worthy of telling you about. The north cast-in-place concrete canopy. The east-west canopies, they were unprotected up until about 10 years ago when I did a project there. In around 2013, these canopies were existing concrete, including the roof surface. So there was no roofing, it was just poured concrete, exposed to the elements. Water would drain to scuppers and drain off of them, but water was getting in them over all those years. And we put a roof system over top of them. We put an elastomeric coating, did a lot of repairs, put an elastomeric coating over them to protect them, and they've done well. And over the last couple of months, the columns have just started to crack significantly. And what we found, and I have a couple pictures, the rebar inside those columns is corroding, and when it does, it expands and it pushes the concrete away, which is called spalling. The concrete falls away. And there's also electrical conduit in every one of those columns. They put a box in the column. At one point, maybe in the 70s, they had a light on each one of those. And that conduit is corroding, and it's a pretty sizable conduit, and that is pushing the concrete away as well. So I've asked Dewey Engineering for a proposal. They have the forensics division, Ron Carr, who's very good, came out, and we took a quick look so he could prepare a proposal. And we're looking at an estimated cost of $18,000, which includes an allowance of $10,000 to bring a concrete restoration contractor with him, show him what areas we want him to open up, explore, and repair when we're finished, so we can truly determine what the project will need to be. So they'll perform the study. This person will help us determine what's causing the cracks and what we may need to do, and is it even feasible? Is the project taking the east and west canopies down and just putting new canopies up? Taking them down and putting no canopies up? I don't think that's an option, because I think the students are used to gathering under these, and it's, I agree, but not everyone may, but I believe that the canopies are important, not only aesthetically, but I think they're important functionally, because kids spend a lot of time hanging out under those at the high school.
Is there any near-term risk to anything falling?
No, so there's no imminent failure, right? But
I mean, you want to go fast.
we want to go fast. That's why I'm bringing this project up now before, I do want to, I'm going to engage Dewey to do that study unless there's opposition, because I want to get moving on making sure. And obviously, if they come out and they see something that's too concerning, we would brace it or do what we have to do for that reason. But no, when Ron was out a few weeks ago, he didn't see anything that was so concerning that we needed to immediately address it, but it is a 2022 project for sure. This isn't one that can rest beyond next year. And the other thing I want to do is, I don't want to do anything more than just some minor repairs to the ornamental facade and just cleaning and protecting it with whatever clear product is out there that doesn't affect the color or the look, but just to preserve it, because it hasn't been preserved. And there's some little things, you can see some cracks and things that are starting. And here are some of the now the two photos on the left, top and bottom, those are the honeycomb windows, and they also have a similar challenge. They have rebar in those, and they just soak up water and the bars corrode, and as the bars corrode, they expand and push the concrete off. And that's a project that's been in the book for quite some time. So this is starting to feel like it needs to be a masonry restoration canopy kind of project at North. And the columns in the middle there, those two photos, you can see the surface, the cracks that are coming through.
And you're saying this because it makes more sense and costs less money to do it all at the same time?
Yes.
Opposed to twice?
It's one that's, when packaged, would be a more competitive number. We can certainly break numbers out and do total bids and see if it makes sense or not, but it would make sense. The Honeycomb Windows, I know there's some, folks that really love the Honeycomb Windows, but I worry that it's really not a feasible option to just fix those and paint those. I think they may have to come out, and maybe, aluminum window systems have to be put in place, because it's just going to be the most cost-effective solution, and maybe you can recall some of the honeycomb in the top part of those aluminum windows somehow, so we're respecting the history. We'll have to talk about it.
They,
Get more lead in, there's, that's a debate.
I'm sorry, I missed what you
Very
said.
sentimental topic.
I understand.
they're very distinctive. What year was North opened originally?
I want to say 76 or it was early, it was mid-70s.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. And the photo on the right is us actually where it was loose, breaking it loose more to see what was back there. So we were able to pry it off with a screwdriver.
That does not look good.
That's not good. So that piece top to bottom is the conduit, that very dark piece. That's the electrical conduit that runs from the slab below up to a box on the top. And the little horizontal piece is one of the kind of stirrups that wraps around the bars that are in the column. So they put those bars in place into the footing, then they put the concrete, form up, pour the concrete, vibrate it to the top, the bars hang out, and then they come back later, form the roof, and do the roof. So this is now trying to fix a column that's between the ground and the roof structure. So we have to see, obviously, if we can afford to fix these columns and do it that way, it would be ideal. But if it starts to look like it's half the cost of a new canopy, then we have to think about the right thing, because maintaining cast-in-place concrete is forever. The stadium, every couple years, we're going back and we're doing repairs to the stadium because it's cast in place at North as well. So we're constantly, doing repairs. So whatever we can do to try to, make these sustainable and least costly to us is, what we need to do. But I am very sensitive to aesthetics. I mean, I was in the architectural world for 20 years, so trust me, I battle myself with not spending too much, but not wanting it to look bad. So I have an internal struggle with this. Miscellaneous update. I'll go through this quickly, but I was to you guys back in May to talk to you about an easement for Northampton Township at Welsh Elementary, and you ultimately said, yes, we're fine with what you're proposing, and it's the walkway that takes you from a trailhead at New Road to the Northampton Municipal Complex. And this was what they showed. They wanted to go with the yellow path, and you guys said, okay. Then we came back and said, well, they actually need to do the red path because they can't build a bridge over the wetlands area because it added like $150,000 to the project. And even the red path, you can see the path itself in the middle of it. There's a substantial distance from the edge of the field to the trail, like 30 feet. There's so much runoff there, it's not a problem. If you were playing a sport and had to run to the edge for a play, you still have plenty of runoff area. So they reached back out and said, hey, we asked for a 20-foot easement, but as we look at this and we look at the details, we actually need a 30-foot easement, 5 foot more on each side, because we have storm structures that have to go in to collect stormwater, and they extend beyond the 20 feet that we asked for. So they're not moving the trail, but they're putting a couple storm inlets in to catch storm water as it comes up to the trail. I don't think it's a big issue at all, but I didn't want to just bring you a revised document without telling you what it is. So
They're not putting a stormwater grate near the playing field, are they?
no, you won't have an issue with that. It's just, it was along this stretch along the property lines where they needed it. And so I have the revised easement. I'm going to send it to Rob Cox just to make sure he sees nothing new that would concern him, and then I would put it on the agenda to bring to you. It's been an ongoing thing the township's been looking at. Last change order for Rolling Hills, the electrician provided the final credit, so it's a credit change order back from the electrician. When you look at all of the contracts, we did spend more on the GC, and that was primarily related to the floor issues that we had there. All the others, we got substantial credits back for the most part. And at the end of the day, this project, construction-wise, finished $117,000 below what you approved as a board. So proud of that. That's always the goal. And the building's fantastic. So last couple things. The PA Commission of Crime and Delinquency Act 44 of 2018 requires a school safety and security annual report. We didn't do the report last year during COVID. The report's due by the 30th of June. It seems to have slipped by a bit. However, there's been no request or any comments about it, but I do want to, I prepared the report. It's supposed to be approved via executive session. I can send you the report, and hopefully Robert can schedule a 5-minute, are you guys okay with it, and bless it, maybe before the September 9 meeting. And that would be it. And then that would be my final security act, because as you know, I suspect you know, Mr. Sanko has taken over security at this point. So I will take care of that. He will probably be along to see the process, but. And then the lead in the drinking water. Ed, I know you often ask about this. This is an annual requirement. When I put the proposal out for the HERA testing, the hazard testing, this is one of the many things that I include in the requirements that we do. You have an option of talking about it publicly or performing the test. I perform the test and talk about it publicly because I think it's important. The testing has been performed. We're waiting for the final report. The most interesting and crazy thing is something like 130 spot samples were done. Only one came back problematic, and you wouldn't even guess what building it was. No, it was Star. It was a sink at the Star Center, which is nearly impossible. So we went back, we flushed it today. Tomorrow they're going to take another sample. I think it's just a glitch in a test or whatever it may be, because there's certainly not lead used in products today, and it's public water. So maybe it wasn't flushed enough from construction or whatever it may be. So they're going to retest that one sink, and I think we'll be absolutely fine. So district-wide, we're great. We still have our drinking fountains covered. When we do decide to take those covers off, I will wait until we flush those, test those. I want to make sure, since they've been sitting, that we flush those and do everything we need. So we'll follow up on those, and we'll have them back to do some testing for those. Board agenda items, last slide here. I'll bring to you the PlanCom Part H for both projects, so Finestone and Hillcrest, the change order for Rolling Hills, the Northampton Township Trail Easement, the change order for Soul Finestone, and the contract amendment for the custodial services.
Which I imagine we'll see before it actually we get to the meeting.
You will, and I think that one probably will not be consent. I think that one I would make a motion item. But the rest, I think,
We have to, because we don't have enough people here anyway.
yeah. I think the rest can be, or if you think we don't have enough and I need to make them all motion.
I would just send out an email and say if anybody has an objection to consent.
Okay.
I don't think it's good to ask.
And then, so bring these agenda items to the 9th of September meeting, general project update in September, and then the capital project presentation in October. And the book is better than ever. It's the best capital, like Richard Scarry is one of my favorites, so it's the biggest, best capital book ever.
So Doug, you'll appreciate this. So I work for a company that's got a 100-year-old building we took over about a year and a half ago, and looking at our, capital situation and how to spend and what to spend. And I can now give them all this advice about if it's 70% the new value, the renovations. But it was interesting to be able to tell the story of how you figure out, what's a good spend, what's a bad spend, how you plan it out, just given what I've learned here over the last 8 years with you. And I actually quoted, or I didn't quote, but I talked to them about your book, and I said, hey, we could do a book on this building, and it would
It'd be fun.
advertise things. So anyway, it's something to be proud of. We know.
Yeah. I'm proud of that.
It's always my favorite book anyway, so.
Well, I finally put in what the book should have from day one. In my old life, when I prepared those books, there was a narrative for every building in the front. So in the book, it will have the description of the site, the fields, where the fields are, the orientation of the fields, It will have the conditions, any concerns, and then it'll have the other site components, broken down by component. Then it has the building interior components and the building exterior components. Gives you an overview of what the different wall types are. And then there's recommendations under each section on what needs to be considered. So I can list the concerns for each building in the considerations, and then they tie into the 5-year plan at the back. So now the whole story ties together. So I've added those for each building, and it's exciting stuff.
And I returned my old book from a couple of years ago.
Did.
So you could recycle it.
We did.
Yeah, I treasure those books. I got to tell you, the needlepoint system, I think is just a really great addition to schools when you think about the impact it can have on mold and pollen and all sorts of air quality issues. I think that's really major. I mean, we've seen around the country, we've seen schools close down because of mold and issues. So
I agree, and it's exciting to talk. Everyone's passionate about their own thing. And when I talk to our environmental consultant, he's so passionate. He'll talk about mold for hours.
yeah.
And but it's fun hearing about your project and the testing before and the testing after and the findings and he's so good. We're very fortunate to have the consultants we do, because he dives in and cares a lot about it. So it's fun. It's fun to do.
Before we go, I just want to say that I always love the picture. Like this is from the beginning of the meeting, but I love seeing the pictures, the progress. It's so cool. And I agree. It's really exciting, and especially just knowing that we've resumed, our capital plan, everything. But I just want to specifically say, I literally live 1 minute from the Star Center. I pass that building all the time. The pictures do not do it justice. That building, honestly, the property what do they call it? The street, it's gorgeous. Like, it's a really beautiful building. I mean, it's a very busy street, obviously, for Richboro. Even my husband, he's like, look, that looks really good. It's really, really impressive.
Yeah, the architect did a great job, and the teaming up with the township, some of it was painful, the village overlay stuff, but it does fit in.
Curb appeal, that was it.
Curb appeal, yes.
But just the way the fence is and
Yeah.
it really is.
And if you look at it closely, when you look at the side where the outdoor eating is, that is the pavilion feel, that if you look across the street, there's a pavilion.
Yeah.
And that is a direct connection of the element from that building, from the library. So the pieces are picked up from the surrounding buildings. Breslin just does a really nice job. They did a great job.
Think about where, for the students that are going to be in that building, where they've come from. Wow.
You have to feel good going into that building.
Absolutely.
I mean, you really, it feels, I think it's going to change the way some of those kids feel about school. I think they're going to feel great. It's so wonderful in there.
Yep, if I may, I just want to second that. As you all know, my husband previously taught one of those programs when they had no home. So this is, it really just brings us joy. When will we have an opportunity to go through and christen the place?
So we were working on that, and Mr. Lambert, kind of unexpectedly, has been out for a bit. So I'll have to find out what the date wants to be, because we were working on that. I know Sam Smith was offering tours to community through the students' return and the parents' returns. But I'm happy to offer a tour, at some point, if you just want to go in through with me. If there's a group that wants to go, or if it ends up being a couple groups at different times, let's just do it. Reach out to me, and I can set it up for an afternoon or right after work or whatever works for you. Yeah. That's.
You were talking about a grand opening as well as us getting to see it, right? And you were just saying till Dr. Lambert comes back?
Dr. Lambert was working on a date.
It'd be great to have an event, there. Any of these great buildings just to celebrate.
Yeah. He was planning an event because the students being involved in the event would be really great.
Yeah.
I just don't know where it landed because of, and now there's a lot happening. But let me, I've been working closely, and I have to credit Adam Kalachi and David M. They've been great. They've been helpful. We've been working to get the building ready, you know, in Chuck's absence, and they've been super. So I do thank them publicly for all their help on that. So I'm good.
I have one last thought, which is I'd like to pull together the dollar amounts that we've received through PlanCon, and make sure that our state legislators are aware of that issue. Because, I mean, that's like a significant source of state support that's just going away.
Yeah, we did, just before Bill left, we put together the number of monies from reimbursement that we haven't gotten that we were due, you know, as a result of these projects. Yeah, something like that. It's significant. I mean, it's, you know, even though it's pennies on the dollar, when you consider all the projects we've done at the cost we performed them at, there's some significant monies there. Even though it's over the life of a bond and it never feels like a big number, it's still real money that we're not seeing.
Yeah, that we're not seeing from Harrisburg that we, by all rights, should have.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Anybody else? All right. Thank you, Doug.
Thank you, guys.
Meeting adjourned.
Thank you.
See you all next week.
Yeah,
Right, Andy.
next week.
We'll be talking.
Thanks, Andy.
I think those data really are cool.
Seriously, the whole big conversation with my owner, and they had this go out over, wanting to put together a 5-year plan, and my boss was